The first season of Daredevil Born Again on Disney Plus just ended, and I don't know how to feel about it. On one hand, I think the show had some great moments and had flashes of the original Netflix show, and on the other, I feel like it didn't quite stick the landing. To be clear, this show had a lot to live up to with almost impossible expectations. A lot of people consider the Netflix Daredevil show to be the best superhero show of all time, and I would argue that it's just a great show, period. I firmly believe that anyone can sit down, watch the show, and enjoy it without ever having picked up a comic book before. The show was that good, from the lighting to the cinematography to the action sequences, but the thing that made that show shine the most were the themes and the characters. Some of the best writing I've ever seen has come from that show, so when Disney decided to continue it, I think it's safe to say that a lot of people were skeptical on if they could pull it off or not. Originally, the show was going to be 18 episodes. Matt wasn't going to show up in costume until the 4th episode, and Foggy and Karen were not going to be in the show at all. The show was rewritten into 9 episodes, and a few of those original characters were brought back. So in this video, I want to talk about if Daredevil Born Again worked. Full disclosure, this video is going to be filled with spoilers. I'm going to jump around a lot because I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you've watched the show. Moving on. First, I want to talk about the things that I liked and I think worked well in the show. I think the showrunners did a lot of research and tried to pay as much respect as they could to the original Netflix show. I see a lot of the elements that I, and imagine a lot of the fans, loved from the original show in this new Disney Plus series. I think the cinematography is really well done in the show, even though a lot of the time it still has this gray, washed out look like a lot of the MCU projects do, but I think they carefully crafted a lot of their shots. There's a lot of long takes, there's great blocking, and there's some artistic zooms that really make for some interesting shots. Now, a lot of the environments don't feel as dark and grimy or as real as the original Netflix show, and I think a lot of that has to do with the very dramatic lighting. Daredevil Born Again isn't hard to look at by any means, but with this show having a much larger budget than the Netflix show, it's a little frustrating that something as fundamental as lighting wasn't as focused on as much. But that's a small nitpick. Overall, I really did love the cinematography in the show. Another element that the showrunners really studied were the action scenes. I don't think there was a fight scene as good as the one in the beginning of the first episode, but I appreciated that they really focused on the blocking, tried to do as long of takes as possible, and that the fight scenes weren't cut to hell like some of the other MCU projects in the past. These fights felt gritty, brutal, and graphic. Daredevil Born Again marked the start of Marvel Television, which is going to focus on more mature and graphic storytelling, which for a Disney Plus company, I respect and appreciate. I can't tell you how tired I am of literal superheroes punching each other and shooting each other with hardly any blood shown on screen. And in Daredevil Born Again, I definitely got my wish. This show, especially in the last episode, really had some pretty graphic body horror moments. At times, even more than the original Netflix show. Now that show dealt with darker themes and topics, and was still very bloody, but they didn't show someone squeezing another person's head until it exploded. Jesus Christ! Even though scenes like these made me scream in shock and horror at times, I appreciated it. This didn't feel like your typical Marvel Disney show. I also felt that the violence fit the characters and the story and weren't just shallow attempts at shock value. But I think the most important element that the showrunners got right were the characterizations of Matthew Murdock and Wilson Fisk. Their relationship was what the core of the original show was really centered around. In the end of season 3, Matt gave up his life as Matthew Murdock and only wanted to live as Daredevil. He thought it was necessary in order to beat Fisk in his war on crime. And in the end of the last episode of season 3, Daredevil ends up beating Fisk to a bloody pulp in front of his wife, resists the urge to kill him, and tells him that he in this city rejected Fisk and threatened him that if he ever got back into crime, he'll file a claim and deport Vanessa, making sure that she'll never step foot in New York again. At the start of Daredevil Born Again, Foggy is shot as they're leaving Josie's. Daredevil tracks down Bullseye, who is the culprit. fights him, and in a moment of despair and weakness, after he hears that Foggy's heart has stopped beating, he throws Bullseye off a roof of a building, which would have killed him if he didn't have super enhancements that he got after fighting Fisk in the end of season 3. Matt decides to retire Daredevil and just focuses on his life as Matt Murdock, a complete 180 from season 3. Matt and Fisk's relationship has come so far and is so established at this point that they can sit down together in a diner in public and have a conversation.
This caution that you're giving me, who's it from? Matt Murdock or...
This time Matt convinces himself that justice can be served through the system, and over the course of the season, we see him slowly lose faith in the idea that he's doing any good or making any real change through the limits of the law.
I made a promise to myself that I'd let the system handle it. Besides, I'm not him anymore, and I won't let myself be.
He eventually dons the cowl again to save the life of a young girl and to take down Muse. But this still feels like a temporary stint as a vigilante. It isn't until the penultimate episode where Matt really has the realization that he's making no progress working through the system that Fisk controls.
We put Poindexter away and it changes nothing. All right, we defend Hector Ayala and he's still murdered. Probably by the same cops who were out there assaulting citizens, by the way. All right, Leroy Bradford goes away for eating a box of caramel corn. Heather's assaulted by Muse and she thinks Fisk is right. And now this asshole, this privileged sociopath can get away with ripping off teachers. We're not serving justice here, we're babysitting chaos. What we do, it feels useless.
I know that the death of Foggy Nelson was controversial, but I agree with the showrunners when they said that the show needed a dramatic catalyst to make Matt hang up the cowl for good, and I think they succeeded with this. It does kind of suck that we only got like 5 minutes with Foggy, Matt, and Karen together again, but since the relationship was so well done in the Netflix show, I was ready for a new take on Daredevil in this world. There are a lot of new characters in the show besides the returning characters of Matthew Murdock, Wilson Fisk, Fisk's wife Vanessa, Foggy, Karen, Bullseye, and the Punisher. Matt has a new love interest and a new partner in his law firm. Wilson Fisk has a brand new staff in his role as mayor. There are some new vigilantes and some returning side characters from other MCU projects. I think they all fit into the story well, and I think they're great additions to this new series. I was pretty tense anytime Fisk's advisor kept objecting to him, and after he promoted his other advisor who looks like he gets all of his info from the Nelk boys, I thought Fisk was going to kill her anytime she was on screen.
Where do we start?
I suppose we would need to conduct a feasibility study, land surveys, building permits, zoning, environmental impact, traffic. The council will want to know that this project is viable.
Yes, let's commission that study.
We can't do that without the council's approval.
Get the council.
No, and we can't get their approval until we ask the public advocate to put it on the docket.
That's the first step.
Yes, sir.
Let's take that step.
I honestly thought there was a bit more development with Fisk over Matt. At least it felt like that towards the end. I really found his relationship with Vanessa to be one of the most interesting subplots of this show. Even though she cheats on him, tries to take over his criminal empire, and nearly falls out of love with him, Fisk is still such a simp for Vanessa, he's willing to do anything to win her over, just like in the Netflix show.
Why him? It was his hands.
Hey, yo, what the
His hands drew beautiful sketches, just...
Okay, there's a little bit more nuance to that relationship, but I found it really interesting nonetheless.
Wouldn't let that happen to me though.
I think my biggest complaint that I have with the show is that Daredevil is hardly in it. With the exception of the opening scene against Bullseye in the first episode, Matt Murdock does not appear in costume until episode 6 for one scene to save Hector Ayala's niece. He then appears in one more scene in episode 7 where he fights Muse again in Heather's office to take him down. Doesn't appear in the suit at all in episode 8, and then he dons the suit again in the finale but only has one more fight scene in it. I understand that there has to be some build-up and some tension to make Daredevil's comeback more dramatic, but honestly, there's hardly any Daredevil in Daredevil Born Again. Don't get me wrong, as a fan of the Netflix show, I am totally here to see Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio return in their roles of Matthew Murdock and Wilson Fisk, respectively. But after the tease we got of what the MCU's version of Daredevil could look like in She-Hulk, I was pumped to see how the MCU could enhance Daredevil. The action scenes were so good in the show, I just wish we would have gotten more of them. I'm also not a huge fan of the way the show was structured. Like I said, the original idea for the show was supposed to be 18 episodes, which would definitely give more time to flesh out certain characters and build the story a bit better. The Netflix series had 13 episodes in each season, and each episode was about an hour long. There was so much more that could have been explored in each episode, but at the same time, each scene felt so crucial to the story. Meanwhile, even though it breaks the traditional MCU 6-episode structure, Daredevil Born Again only has 9 episodes, and besides the premiere and finale episodes, each episode is only about 35 to 40 minutes long. But somehow this story didn't feel as tight as the Netflix show. Episode 5, called With Interest, is a straight up filler episode. Matt goes into a bank where Kamala Khan's father works to apply for a loan and gets rejected. Then a bank heist occurs. Matt ends up spoiling the operation in his civilian clothes, and by the end of the episode, nothing crucial happens to the story. Don't get me wrong, it's still a well done episode, but it did nothing to progress the series. The only significance I could think of that this episode provides is the introduction of the hostage negotiator, who appears at the end of the finale with a few of the other characters who appeared throughout the show, implying that she will have a bigger role in season 2. And speaking of that scene, I do like how it ends on a cliffhanger, although we didn't get to spend that much time with most of those characters, which is kind of the downside of introducing a cast of a lot of new supporting characters. There's just not as much emotional connection to those characters as there would have been if they brought back some of the characters from the Netflix show. Remember how I said that the original Daredevil Born Again show was going to be 18 episodes and Foggy and Karen weren't in them at all? Well, Foggy is only in the show for the first 5 minutes. Karen leaves after the trial and doesn't return until the last episode of the series. I'm not saying that was the right or wrong choice, I'm just saying that the payoff of this moment isn't as dramatic as it should have been if you would have had Foggy and Karen throughout the whole series. A lot of people online were wondering why they didn't bring back Detective Mahoney from the Netflix show instead of the detective whose name I don't remember and won't look up. He had worked with both Matt and Daredevil, which we see in the Netflix show. Instead, we hear a lot about the relationship between this detective and Matt, but it really holds no merit because we've never seen it. Matt really went looking for an army, and if I were him, I'd be pretty disappointed. This show is a slow burn, man, and I feel pretty unsatisfied after the finale was over. The show dragged us to the finale, and at the climax of the story just gave us no payoff. Since the show ended on a cliffhanger, I guess I'm weirdly anticipating the release of season 2 with the hope that this season is a lot more fast-paced and action-packed now that Daredevil is fully back as a vigilante and Fisk is pretty much fully back to being Kingpin. Overall, even though it seemed a bit regressive breaking the characters down to rebuild them again in a different way, since the end of season 3 Daredevil and Kingpin were in interesting places thematically, I do think that the writing was pretty good. Not to the level of the Netflix show, but I never really thought that it could reach that standard. It gave us some new characters to root for and integrated the continuity of the Netflix show pretty well into the continuity of the MCU, all while still feeling grounded. I want to say that this is the best Marvel Disney Plus show, but honestly, I don't think I can. I think I prefer watching Loki to this. Maybe it's the second best? I don't think the show did anything inherently wrong. Maybe my expectations were just set a little bit too high. I don't think it's bad by any means. I like the risks that they took. I like how it was made for a more mature audience, and I like how it respected the audience of the original Netflix show. I guess we'll have to see what season 2 has in store for us. But what do you think? I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching the video. Please be sure to give this video a like and subscribe so you don't miss my next video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.